We assume Valentine's Day is reserved for chocolates, roses, and romance. But for the people in these 3 true scary stories from Valentine's Day, the holiday marks the anniversary of something far darker. In the United States, February 14th sees a statistically strange spike in stalker activity and domestic disturbances. But statistics don't account for the feeling of being watched from the backseat of your own car, or the gift left on your doorstep that wasn't from anyone you know. Sometimes the person obsessed with you isn't the one holding your hand at dinner. It's the one watching you through the window. Our first account takes us to the biting cold of Portland, Maine. In February of 2019, Sarah, a 24-year-old graphic designer, lives alone in a second-floor apartment of a converted Victorian house in the West End. It is a quiet neighborhood, mostly older couples and young professionals. Sarah isn't dating anyone, so she plans to spend Valentine's evening working on a freelance project. Around 6 p.m., the sun has already set, plunging the street below into a murky gray darkness. Sarah sits at her desk near the bay window. She watches the streetlights flicker on, illuminating the snowbanks. She feels safe here. The building has a heavy security door, but then she notices a car parked directly across the street, a sedan, idling with its lights off. The exhaust puffs white clouds into the freezing air, but the windows are too tinted to see inside. She assumes it is just a neighbor waiting for a spot to open up. She goes back to her work. 40 minutes pass. Sarah stands up to stretch and goes to the kitchen to refill her glass. When she returns to the window, the car is still there. A subtle anxiety prickles at the back of her neck. It hasn't moved an inch. Suddenly, her buzzer rings. The sound makes her jump, spilling a bit of wine on her sleeve. She walks to the intercom by the door. "Hello," she asks. Static hisses back, then a voice. It isn't a delivery driver or a friend. It is a man's voice, low and muffled, like he is speaking through a thick scarf. "Delivery for Unit 2, the voice says. Sarah frowns. "I didn't order anything. Who is this?" "Valentine's delivery," the voice insists. "From an admirer?" Sarah feels a pit form in her stomach. She hasn't told anyone her new address. "Just leave it in the vestibule," she says. "I can't," the man says. "Required signature." She glances back at the window. The car across the street is empty. The driver isn't in the car anymore. He is downstairs. Sarah doesn't buzz him in. She engages the deadbolt and chains the door. A moment later, she hears the heavy front door of the building creak open. The footsteps in the hallway are slow. Heavy boots on old wood. Thud, thud, thud. They stop directly outside her door. There is no knock, just silence. She can hear the man breathing on the other side of the thin wood. Slowly, agonizingly, the knob begins to turn. Sarah dials 911, her fingers shaking so hard she almost drops the phone. As she whispers to the dispatcher, a piece of paper slides under her door. It isn't a delivery slip. It is a photograph. Sarah steps closer, squinting in the dim light. It's a Polaroid. The photo is of her, taken through her bay window 10 minutes ago. The angle suggests it was taken from the fire escape outside her window. He had been watching her from 2 feet away before he came to the door. The police arrive within 5 minutes, but the hallway is empty. The car outside was reported stolen 3 days ago from a murdered man. The admirer was a drifter moving down the East Coast. Sarah moved out the next day. She never found out who he was, but every Valentine's Day, she unplugs her doorbell. The second story takes us to a remote cabin in the Smoky Mountains of Tennessee. A couple, Mike and Elena, rent an A-frame cabin miles from the nearest town. The listing boasts total privacy, surrounded by dense pine forest. They arrive late. The key is in a lockbox. The cabin is beautiful, smelling of cedar and wood smoke, but the atmosphere shifts when they find the back door unlocked. Mike assumes the cleaning crew forgot to secure it, but Elena feels a cold draft coming from the basement door, which sits slightly ajar. They try to ignore it, cooking dinner and settling in by the fire, but as the night deepens, The silence of the woods becomes oppressive. Around 11 p.m., Elena goes to the bathroom. As she washes her hands, she notices the shower curtain is pulled shut. She didn't leave it like that. She pulls it back. But in the wet porcelain of the tub, there is a single, muddy boot print. It is fresh. Elena freezes. She calls for Mike quietly. Mike grabs a heavy fireplace poker and checks the perimeter. The mud in the bathtub matches the red clay outside. Someone is inside the house with them, or was inside. They decide to leave immediately. This isn't worth the risk. They grab their keys and run to the car parked in the gravel driveway. As Mike's headlights sweep across the front porch, they see him. A man in a tattered flannel shirt is standing by the woodpile. He is just staring at them. He isn't holding a weapon. He is holding Elena's phone. She thought she left it on the kitchen counter. Inside, he must have been standing in the kitchen while they were in the living room. Mike slams the car into reverse. As they speed away down the winding dirt road, Elena's phone, which is still in the man's hand, connects to the car's Bluetooth. A voice comes through the car speakers, crystal clear and terrifyingly calm. "Why are you leaving? I made the bed for you." The realization hits them. The host they messaged on the app wasn't the owner. The owner had been missing for weeks. The stranger had been living in the crawl space, waiting for the next booking. Mike and Elena sued the rental company, but the man was never caught. They say sometimes when they are in their own home, they can hear the faint sound of a phone connecting to Bluetooth, even when no one else is around. Our final story happens on a stretch of Route 66 in Arizona near midnight. A college student named David is driving back to Flagstaff after a bad date. The desert is pitch black, the only light coming from his high beams. He sees a car pulled over on the shoulder, hazards flashing. A woman is waving her arms. It's Valentine's Day, and David is a good guy. He pulls over. The woman, young and shivering, runs to his window. "My boyfriend," she sobs. "He kicked me out of the car." David unlocks the door. She climbs in the passenger seat. She is pretty, wearing a red dress, but she smells like copper and earth. As they drive, she stays silent, staring out the window. David tries to make small talk. "So, where are you guys from?" She doesn't answer. She just turns her head slowly to look at him. In the passing light of a truck, David sees her hands. They are covered in dark, dried blood. "He didn't kick me out," she whispers. Her voice is hollow. "I ran." David's heart hammers against his ribs. "Did he hurt you?" "No," she says, a strange smile creeping onto her face. "I hurt him." She lunges. David slams on the brakes. The car screeches, fishtailing on the asphalt. The woman grabs the steering wheel, yanking it toward the ravine. David fights her, his elbow smashing into her nose. She doesn't scream. She laughs, a high, manic sound. The car spins out, sliding off the road and slamming into a ditch. The airbags deploy with a deafening bang. David coughs, shoving the deflated bag aside. He looks to the passenger seat. It is empty. The passenger door is swinging open in the desert wind. David scrambles out, sprinting back up to the highway. When the troopers arrive, they search the area. They find footprints leading into the deep desert scrub, but they vanish. They backtrack to where David picked her up. A mile off the road, they find a parked car with a deceased man inside. It was a Valentine's date, gone horribly wrong. The woman had snapped. But the most disturbing detail isn't the crime scene. It is what the police found in David's car. On the passenger seat, there was no blood on the upholstery. There were no fingerprints on the door handle. The only evidence she had been there was a small, heart-shaped candy wrapper and the lingering, metallic smell of old blood. David never drives Route 66 at night anymore. To this day, he doesn't know if he picked up a murderer fleeing a crime scene or if he picked up something that wasn't fully human anymore. A spirit replaying its final violent act. These stories remind us that while we are busy looking for love, there are predators looking for targets. The scary thing about Valentine's Day isn't ghosts or monsters. It's the fact that you lower your guard for the sake of romance. So this February 14th, lock your doors, check your back seat, and be careful who you let into your heart or your house. You never know who is holding the other half of the heart. If these stories kept you up, hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications. And whatever you do tonight, don't watch this video alone.